Hi, I'm Tim. Join me in this video as we unbox, assemble, and test fly the FMS twin-engine Su-27 electric ducted fan jet. Let's get to it. The folks at FMS sent me the twin 70mm, that's the fan blade size of their Su-27 twin-engine electric ducted fan model. I believe this uses the same motor as in the Viper. An earlier review I did, so two of the motors, this thing should really step out. So you see it's a huge box, very well presented here with a model. This is the airplane, so it's really quite an airplane of one of the more advanced Soviet fighters, the Su-27. Information here is included on the side, and we can go through all that later. Again, a pretty impressive size box. So let's go ahead and unbox it itself. We'll put that on the table next. This is such a huge box, I've got to stand up doing it, but that's okay. So here is everything very nicely packed with styrofoam for shipping. Quite impressive, actually. Here is the cockpit right here. This is an infrared search and track design for the model. These are some of the important screws and such for the tail surfaces. And notice this is the nose cone. There's some magnets in here. We'll have to pull off the tape. The nose is held on by magnets. And I'm unboxing this for the first time. This is the first time I've seen everything. So this is the back of the airplane. I think these are some chaff and flare dispensers for electronic self-protection. This is one of the wings. Notice that the aileron servos are installed, which is nice. They're all hinged. Here's the top of the wing. An important point is I was going through directions, there are no flaps in this airplane. So there are no flaps. What will happen with these higher performance jets like the Su-27, the airplane gets a surprising amount of lift from the fuselage itself. So as FMS designed this airplane, they got it to fly well without the need for flaps. I think that'll be a very good sign of how it's going to fly out at the field. So let me put this over here. Here's the other wing. As I mentioned, the horn's in place, the servo's put in. Just a very nice job doing everything, and then the wires will stick out here. These are the ventral fins that go on the belly of the aircraft. This is a carbon fiber rod for the wing dihedral to make sure the wings stay on. These are one rudder, and there's two rudders, each one with a rudder servo installed. Hinged everything. These are the two, they're not really elevators, they're all moving horizontal tail surfaces. So that should provide plenty of nose authority for the airplane. Now, this is pretty heavy, but this is the fuselage, obviously. So it appears to be a single battery, goes up here. It's a six-cell LiPo. These are all the connectors, the battery cable that goes up front. This is a battery eliminator circuit, universal battery eliminator circuit. So that goes in there, the gear. So I just have to figure out all this stuff, how to hitch it up and put on the wings. And you can see, if you look down here, the two engines buried inside the intakes. So that's pretty neat. This is the speed brake that apparently works with an extra channel. So a very impressive model. Everything looks good so far. And the only other thing in here, and I won't drag you through all this, but just little things like the missiles and so forth. These are just decorative missiles. They don't really do anything, so we'll put them on for visual effect, but there's a few more of those. And that's basically it. The directions call for a 20-minute assembly. It looks like there's only some glue for the back end. We put it together with screws. I'll take a little bit longer just to work my way through it. But this is the model, so we'll put it together. The next video will be a walk around of the, well, I'll show you it going together, then the finished model. A nice view of the very substantial main fuselage. It's so big, it's perfect for putting in all the gear and the retractable gear for the finished model. So I am powering up the model first just to get the servo centered before you attach the wings and all that stuff. The gear is incredible. So I simply plugged it into my receiver. Let's look at the gear extending. And notice the gear on the nose gear steers with a little landing light. So we'll retract it. A very minor note, the directions came in Chinese, easy to find English directions on the internet. So let's start putting the model together. This is the vertical fin and rudder. You can see that it literally plugs in. That is the servo connection bolted in. It just connects to the servo right there, and that slot with a screw holds the fin in place. Now we'll go to the horizontal fin, stable elevators. A very strong metal rod just goes in there with a flat end on one side. And you can see it just goes into the back end of the fuselage, that very strong fuselage. And we will attach the elevator to that with a flat end collar. Another view of it in place, and here is the all-moving stabilizer, and you can just see it's not connected to the servo. It just goes up and down like so. Now there's a very clear indication of where that has to line up for the stab, so you have a good center point that is built into the fuselage. It's also quite clearly stated in the directions. You can see that's outlined there. Again, quite complete directions. And there, the servo, very easy, connected to the back installed elevator. This is the wing spar, just a carbon tube. It just fits into a slot like so. And it pops out on the other side. You don't glue anything in place. The wings just slide onto that. That makes everything super strong. This is a view of the end of the wing. You can see that there's pigtail between the lights and the aileron servo into one connector for the aileron servo. Notice that there is a connection for the servo. The S is the yellow signal. The black is the black line. It's got to get that right. Another view of the pigtail connection for the ailerons, with the 3 lines for the ailerons, 2 for the lights. And here everything's connected in place. You just bury the wires into the wing as you slip it in place. One wing in place, the other one ready to get put on, and you can see the back end of the model. We put your jet together. You saw the previous steps. The directions were pretty good. As I mentioned, the kit came with Chinese directions, but online English directions are readily available, and that helped with most things. So we'll look at the top of the airplane, then we'll flip it over and look at the bottom. So this is the nose cone. There's little magnets that hold it on. It's just a slot. This is good for when you're going to bring it in a car. The cover hatch is just a latch back here that works very well. This is a 6-cell battery. You're probably going to want a 6-cell because with the twin engines, you're going to get about 4 minutes of flight time. It just those 2 engines draw a lot of power. It's just the way it's set up. Also, you're going to probably want the 6-cell because you need as much weight forward to keep the center of gravity balanced. On my transmitter, I set a 3-minute timer. I just don't want there to be any problems running out of energy. So 3-minute flight with the twin engines. Now back here is a real rat's nest of wires. So let me walk you through it that might help you with a few things. First of all, this is a ultimate battery eliminated circuit. Usually these are built into the electronic speed controls, but when you have really big models like this one with 22.5 volts or so, it's much more efficient to have a separate BEC. And what happens is, this is part of the battery eliminated circuit. circuit. That is just plugged into the BATT port, which you rarely ever use with an electric model. Now, all these other wires are put together fairly well. You're going to have to look at whatever your transmitter has for port assignments. This is a Spectrum AR620. I like it a lot. I like it because it's reliable. It works with my Spectrum transmitter and the antenna is built in, but you can use whatever one you want. On this one, port number 1 is the throttle. That is clearly labeled with the cables. Number 2 is ailerons. And remember, they're pigtailed in because you have ailerons in each wing. That's automatically done for you. The elevator is pigtailed because you have servos for each side of the elevator and back. You just have to plug it in, number 3 for the 620. The rudder is a little bit unusual because you'll see 3 servo wires going into the rudder in here. That's done for you at the factory. It is the 2 rudder servos on back combined with the nose gear steering. That's why you have 3. They all work together. Number 5 is the gear. Those are 3 gear mechanisms into one. And number 6 is a little bit confusing. It's the flaps. There are no flaps on the Su-27, just ailerons. What they use as a flap is a speed brake back here. A speed brake for a fighter aircraft. It's just something to slow you down because you're so slick. If you're doing a rejoin or something, you want to be able to slow down to do the rejoin. So there's plenty of room in the battery compartment here, and that's the battery compartment. So what I want to do now is turn the airplane upside down. We'll do a little look at the underside, power it up, watch all the controls, and we'll be ready to fly. This is the underside of the airplane. You can see that it's all put together pretty well. The ailerons are connected. The gear we're going to demonstrate in a minute. The full moving elevators. Really not much to see here. A lot of the intakes, the design for the twin engine ducted fan. So let me reach over here and get the transmitter. And what I'm going to do now is demonstrate the landing gear. So these are the main gear, all built in the fuselage of the nose gear. It's pretty amazing what they've done. We'll take a look at it. And of course the nose gear steers. This is a guard for dirt and rocks being kicked up to the engine exhaust rail here. That's a real problem with the operational airplane. You don't want that foreign objects into the engine. If you're flying this off a grass field, which I think you'll have enough power to do, you may want to remove that. So just an FYI. So we'll go ahead and watch the sequencing. Notice they actually have servos for the landing gear doors in there. It's amazing. So let's retract the gear at this time. We can back up a little bit. We'll look at the control throws and the engine in a moment. This is the tail stinger. I'm just going to use some Scotch tape to put that on because the model just barely fits in the car. If I put this on here, it will not fit. And same thing for the nose cone. All right, so the battery is powered up. We'll go ahead and look at the elevators right now and back, up, down. So that should be plenty for what we're going to be doing. The rudder's right here, left, right, and the nose gear is correct. And then the ailerons and those throws are correct for the directions. Now this is a speed brake here. It's connected to the flap, which can be a little bit confusing, but let's go ahead and raise that now. So that's the flap right there. Again, they call it the flap. It is not a flap, it's a speed brake, so that's there. Now we will test the engines. And there is plenty of power for that. Now the one final thing we'll do is the center of gravity, which is super important. As I mentioned, you've got to have the battery as far forward. It is 5.7 inches back from the wing leading edge, which is right about here. I marked it on there. And so we'll just lean over and it bounces right at the center of gravity there. So that is the completed model. We will wait for some good weather, head out to the field, and take it for a test flight. Good morning. We're at the field. It's a beautiful day to fly. Just about 2 to 3 knots of wind down the runway. FMS Su-27 is all assembled, range checked, balanced. freshly charged battery, 6 cells. So what we'll do is plug in the battery, do a quick flight control check, make sure everything's okay, then take it for a test flight. This is the No Kidding maiden flight. A little bit across the runway to go right into the wind. You can see I pulled off a little bit soon, but the model just wanted to fly. It felt very comfortable. Plenty of power. It's a big model, so it's pretty easy to see. Just turn around and bring it in traffic, and it looks great in the air. I deliberately kept the throttle a little bit low just for the pictures and the battery life. I flew for 2 minutes. It turns out that I still had 68% power left when I landed. Yes, I did do a few right-hand turns. This is just what came out best for the video. Again, just a very positive, comfortable feel to this model. No trim required at all for this flight. Coming in for the landing, pretty good, angling a little bit, but the model was flying well. You can see I reduced power a little bit, added in, pretty high angle of attack, plunked down a little bit harder, but not bad for the first landing on the runway, everything in one piece. And for maiden flight, it's always good to taxi back to your starting area. Very pleased with that flight. We just finished the first flight of the Su-27. Couldn't be any happier. This is the biggest model I've ever flown. Size, weight, everything. With the twin engines and the 6-cell battery, they recommend about a 4-minute flight time. I kept it to 2 minutes. The timer was set for 3, just so we don't have any issues with the battery going out. The model flies great. It just flies great. It is a well-designed model. It's got plenty of power, very convincing. And one of the things that makes this fly well, outside of the good design, is all this fuselage area, these leading edge strakes, this thick area back here, this provides lift, a ton of lift. The real Su-27 does these various cobra maneuvers that a lot of people thought a jet couldn't do, where it stands on its tail and pitches forward. Aerodynamically, it is a well-designed jet with everything. And you saw in the landing, it was a fairly high angle of attack approach coming in, responded well to power. It kept aileron control the whole way. This is remarkable for a plane like this to have that amount of control. The flight was deliberately a little bit slow to try to see it in the air. It looks beautiful in the air. It sounds beautiful in the air. It's just a good jet. So this, I'm very happy, very pleased. It's a beautiful machine. Make sure you have a car big enough to bring it to the field, a pickup truck or whatever. And I'm just very happy that I had a chance to fly this.